Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Today on the Manspace.
Welcome to the Manspace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter.
Welcome, spacemen. Specifically, I guess, welcome to tea time, where everybody agrees that you're the problem. Here's what's funny today. You'll notice it's just me. Some of you will be deeply disappointed. Others, I guess, could be very excited. I know at least I'm going to be excited by the fact that it's just me. You know, it's funny when you just do this alone. It's a little bit like doing like a video journal, a vlernal. Not to be confused with a vlog. It's very different. A video journal is where I journal my feelings. And that's kind of what today's going to end up being. I have a thing I want to talk about, but it's probably going to go a little awry. First, I need to let you know I've been playing the game Lemmings on my phone. Such a stupid game. Do you remember playing that game? I don't know if you guys, I think we had it on our original Nintendo. Like you just had to stop these lemmings from walking off cliffs and like make sure they get to their home. It's totally a dumb game. I'd say to download it, but don't. Do we really need more games on our phones? Here's one of the things I've been thinking about is there's this, I've noticed lately that it seems like, boy, I didn't even mean to make this segue and I just did it. You guys are welcome. Oh man. Well, I should say this first. I hope today doesn't get controversial. I hope it doesn't. Controversial is the wrong word. I'm going to start by throwing one of the genders under the bus, and then maybe I'll bring it back around. So I've noticed this thing recently, having talked to multiple other couples therapists, that we're seeing. I guess I could say. I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it. An increase in in like therapy kind of stalling out, maybe becoming ineffective. I would say increase in divorce, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. Although divorce statistics are always so hard to tell what's actually the number, we'll say. I read some recent statistics on various types of divorce, heterosexual and then homosexual relationships, and seeing different rates. And I'm always like, I mean, I don't know who did the research and who are their subjects. But I've been thinking about this, like what is happening that it feels like therapy feels like an uphill battle more than it used to. And maybe it's just me, like maybe I'm getting worse at this. I mean, I don't know, that'd be possible. I'm just so good. Although I did used to wonder that I peaked at session 4, my 4th session ever. I've mentioned that on the podcast before. One of my professors said it was a very good session. And I was like, well, that's it. I'm done. So here's what I was wondering as I look at this and think, like I look at these relationships and couples therapy and how it doesn't seem to be going the way I want it to go. And then I read this article by a researcher. She's a therapist who she's big in the solution-focused therapy world. Her name is Michelle Weiner Davis. She has one book that actually I will recommend periodically to clients called The Divorce Remedy. It's a book that's designed to say, hey, look, in short, I'll say, if you want to save your marriage by yourself, here's how you do it. She also has a famous book from the 90s, I think, called Divorce Busting. Not to be confused with Divorce Busters that ended up with a copyright fight. Just kidding. Although I can imagine a really cool music video or a really cheesy one that would be played at one of my conferences, and we'd be all proud of ourselves and thinking we're cute and funny for singing Divorce Busters to the tune of, obviously, Enter Sandman. So the article that I read was called, it was talking about walkaway wife syndrome. Now there is research that shows that women tend to initiate divorces more often than men do. Although again, take that with a grain of salt. But I kind of chuckled at this idea of like a walkaway wife syndrome. I was like, I mean, it makes it sound like syndrome. You mean at some point she was just like, yeah, this isn't working for me. And so and probably actually what's a little misleading about that walkaway wife sounds like this woman was like, one day woke up, was like, I'm out, and just, just like walked away without ever even making any effort whatsoever, never trying to change the relationship. And it actually also makes it sound like she just walked away from her whole life altogether. What's interesting is we do know too that women often end up in a much more difficult spot post divorce, even though actually there is research that also shows that they are happier post divorce. Although I'd like to do my own longitudinal pre-post analysis, time interrupted time lapse analysis of how happy are they. Like I want to know, does their regret or their like I should tried harder, sometimes that happens. Does that happen more often like once they start dating again? Initially no, maybe yes, I don't know. I'm sure I could look that up and find it out, guys, but I won't. I mean, space people, because I'm talking to the women too. Ladies, I gotcha. Before I throw you under the bus, heads up, I'm going to throw you under the bus. But this walkaway wife syndrome thing, I was reading it, and then I also saw this article about, this other article was like, I don't know, on like CNN or something. It was talking about that commenting, like the comment section on social media is becoming like almost like an advice column for people. This one woman posted a video of her kind of complaining about her husband, walking around the house saying, look, here's me doing all this stuff, cleaning, doing all this stuff while my husband sits on the couch and does nothing. And the comments were all, leave him, he's the worst. I left my husband for the same reason and I've never been happier. And it kind of cracks me up because I think, you guys think that video is real? You don't think that probably it was just done for views, like they knew it would get good views? And then this woman who made the video was commenting, she later talked about like, I'm really sad by all those comments. We actually have a really good marriage. And I feel like, then why did you make a video like that? Obviously to get views, because social media is the best. We all want to be influencers. Someone told me just yesterday, by the way, about a book called Influencer. Hey, for those who, I get easily distracted. For those who are wondering about Rob's uploading speed, sitting here by myself, I'm only at 50%. There's nobody in my office building. It's a Saturday and there's nobody here. And I got 50% uploaded. What is happening? Also, you may have noticed at this point, as I said earlier, that I'm alone. Matt and Mike aren't here. We did sit down to record on Wednesday, but then didn't. We all complained about banks, business banking, and just the annoyances of like all the things you have to track running a business when none of us took business classes. That's not true. I took accounting and like 2 other business classes. I took a marketing class. I mean, you'd think I'd be really good at this. Anyway, back to walkaway wife syndrome and this thing that I've been noticing. So here's what I've noticed, and something that's come up recently that's been bothering me, and it bothers me partly because I think this is interfering with what we're trying to do in therapy. I have seen a number of people and talk with other therapists where it's already widely known that we as a culture basically think men are the worst. Now, some of you might argue and think, no, we don't really think that. I mean, we have this whole toxic masculinity thing. Basically, anything that is perceived as masculine is bad. If at any point, this is kind of an interesting thing being a couples therapist and a male couples therapist, a lot of people will pick me or like Matt or Mike probably for the same reason, because I'm a male and they think my husband would like you. And usually it is a female bringing the male into therapy. And usually the men do like me. Although for a long time, I felt like I was almost always siding with the female and trying to open the male up and get him to talk more about his emotional process and share more with her. I still do that, but I've started to do something a little different. I think I've started to understand better why men do some of what they do. Like we've talked multiple times on this show about people being afraid of their men, particularly being afraid of their wives. This is where the throwing under the bus starts to happen. I've thought about a number of times. That was a weird noise I just made, by the way. Like I feel like maybe I should go edit that out. It was like me going, or this is one of my favorite noises. This noise, it's like, in a cartoon when you see something that's like totally parched and it kind of gives its last breath, like, it's one of my favorite noises. I hope you're not listening to this with earbuds because that's going to be disgusting. Just Rob breathing in your ear. Or I should have brought a banana, just like, gross. So what I've been wondering about more and more is like, what is it about the dynamic we have? Why do I meet so many couples where the husband's afraid of the wife? Now, there's part of this that we've talked about before that I think is men are not raised very well or trained very well in how to be inside of a relationship. I think we tend to think relationships are this is like a subconscious type thought. Relationships are for women, like it's their realm. And I like her and I want to be with her. So I want to be in the relationship. I want sex, but I don't know what I'm doing in there. I can't set the tone. Now that's not true, obviously, for all relationships. And there are plenty of relationships I meet where it's not a husband being afraid of the wife. And to clarify something too, just because I've seen tons of relationships where the husband is afraid of the wife, but he's also a huge jerk. So it doesn't mean to say that just because he's afraid of the wife that he's never mean, insensitive, uncaring, anything like that. But I've wondered, like, how did this occur? And I've noticed something in my office and in life, and I could be wrong. I don't think I am, which is a burden I carry, is I always think I'm right. I know I've at least noticed this. Maybe it's not that I'm wrong. There could be a different way of phrasing what I'm seeing, and which is this. Like I watch couples, and if the husband does something stupid or immature or I don't know. Well, we'll just start with stupid and immature. Like not in my office because this has never actually happened in my office. But if the husband were to do something immature, like fart or something, the wife's response tends to be one of like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with you?" And it's this tone of like, "Oh, geez." Or I just gave this example to somebody yesterday that like if the wife walks out wearing some new outfit, it's very likely the husband would be like, "Dude, you look amazing." And she'd be like, how do these pants? These pants make me look fat. No, you look great in those pants. She'll probably go take them off anyway. But if a husband comes out wearing something, now this is not always the case because just the other day I was in Under Armour and I heard this woman speaking to her husband. He's like, he comes out of the way of the changing room, and she's all I hear her say is, "Oh yeah, your butt looks great in that." Now, what's interesting is though, if I came out, actually, this is not true. I paused because I realized my wife wouldn't actually do this, I don't think, but I've seen it happen before too. Actually, in a overhearing conversations in a changing room, where the husband puts something on, he's like, "Oh, I like it," and she's like, "You look like an idiot." It's like this harsh, like, "Are you serious, dude? You want to wear that?" And the tone is so quickly judgmental and harsh that men are like, "Oh, but I don't see as often men giving responses that are like, "Are you serious? What's wrong with you?" It's not to say that men aren't jerks. Men for sure are, and they can be rude and use terrible language, call names, just like women can. But I've noticed that it's much more likely that women will have tones of judgment or like, "You're an idiot," way more often. what's hard and what I wanted to get to today was not actually that, because I don't think that's women just being jerks. In a number of ways, I could actually frame that very easily as like, even just a way of like, dude, I'm trying to help you, but also specifically, the judgment tone is usually coming from a place of like a lot of women I've met where it's like they are so burned out, so overwhelmed from doing so much themselves, or even just having so much anxiety that the husband's always like, men like to be like, women got too much anxiety. She's always worried about stuff. I'm like, yeah, because you don't have to. Or because she does now, you don't. So she has to worry extra because you don't. So worry a little more. So it's not to say that women are like, there's just something broken in women and they're just judgmental jerks. But they do have tones that come out much faster. I've seen it too many times to not notice this, that they like emotionally smack their husband's hands on a regular basis. But the reason I bring this up is because something I've noticed happening in my sessions and talking with other therapists, Matt and Mike included, and we might actually talk about this on another episode, longer episode with all of us, because it's something that I've been curious about. And I feel like it's our job as therapists to say, hey, look, we're not trying to be rude. We're just telling you what we see. And it's hard because it's like a man coming to a woman being like, hey, be nicer. But that's not my point of today. Even it's not. I'm actually going to speak to both to say everyone needs to be doing this differently than they are. But what I see and what I want to have happen is like saying, hey, if I challenge you in therapy, if I see you do something and call you on it, you can't get mad at me. I mean, I guess you can. And generally speaking, I'm not rude to people when I call them on stuff. Usually I shouldn't say usually. Worst case scenario will say I can be sarcastic. Like I'll use humor to try to diffuse what I'm doing. Although sometimes I won't because I think the moment calls for just a direct, I'm going to put this in front of you. But I use humor to lighten it. So it's like, hey, look, I still like you, but you need to know you're doing this. Or you're still a great person and I understand why you're doing it. Almost anytime I call somebody on something they're doing, do you know you're doing this? I will put it in the context of here's why I think you're doing it. And it usually has to do with you're feeling attacked or you're feeling worried or defensive or whatever. But it's happened more and more, I think, sometimes. And I don't know if this is a factor of social media or, I mean, because it does feel rampant on social media. And this has been true in media in general forever. We've talked about it a long time ago, a couple of years ago on the podcast, that fathers are generally portrayed as idiots in media. Excuse me. For example, Homer Simpson is a really good example of like the worst. I think my dad wouldn't let us watch The Simpsons growing up because Homer was such a terrible example of what a father should be. And basically, dads are just bumbling morons. And you watch commercials still, and generally speaking, you can see a tone of like men are idiots. I mean, I didn't really watch this show very often, but oh no, the family. Nope, I lost it. It's the one there. It's the one where I'm going to say this out loud, like I'm waiting for someone to say it in my ear. Modern Family. There we go. Thank you, person who just said it in my ear. Nobody said it. I hadn't described it yet. But on Modern Family, you watch Phil, and he's a total moron. Now, I haven't watched it enough. Maybe he's really a great dude, but it feels like, yeah, I'm really sorry for her that she had to marry such an idiot. Generally speaking, that's the way it goes. And so I think that perpetuates this idea that if something's going wrong in the relationship, it is probably the husband who's at fault. And unfortunately, men, we dig our own graves with that because we do back away from things too quickly. We assume that we are wrong. We've done something bad. We're like little kids. And then we kind of confirm what isn't true. Now, I don't mean to say that men don't do wrong things, but I mean to say that we do wrong. Well, I even wouldn't say wrong things. We do ineffective things sometimes. And knowing that because you did something ineffective doesn't mean you're an idiot or that you don't care. I think sometimes what happens when I watch couples in my office is that, like, when the husband will do something stupidly, uh, I shouldn't even say stupidly, something ineffective, then the female gets really hurt. And I've seen it many times that he didn't do anything hurtful, but it did, she was hurt. And because of that, it looks like, in a linear thinking kind of way, A punched B, so B is hurt. So A is a jerk. Instead of circular causality, which is that whole idea of feedback loops. I'm getting messages from you while I'm sending them to you. And we're reading each other and adjusting constantly. Not to mention the idea of how much goes on inside of someone's own head. And knowing that those things inside our own heads are, they're impacted by so many things that it's hard to say, I'm hurt because you're a jerk. I wish it was that simple. I wish I could just say, hey, don't say this word anymore and she won't be hurt anymore. It's never true, though. I've had it happen in my office where he said exactly what I wanted him to, and she has been hurt. And that, I think that comes from a number of factors. And I want him to stay present with her hurt. But I don't think it's his fault. And so I'm trying to, part of me is doing this because I think I want both men and women to hear, stop coming into my office. That sounds very selfish. Just stop in general thinking it's probably the husband's fault. At least from my office, there's statistics that can disagree on this, actually, and they can disagree with each other on this. For example, one of the things we do is we think, well, men cheat more than women do. Not my office. In my office, it's a half and half rate, or even sometimes I'm seeing way more women that cheated than men. It's always funny too, because when it happens, it's like, if the woman cheats, the immediate narrative we have is, well, something clearly, he would have had to done something really bad for her to cheat, neglected her or whatever. If a husband cheats, like, men and sex, am I right? So we have an unfair narrative for men that kind of hamstrings what we're trying to do to improve our relationships. So until we can start to, I'd like to make a giant clarion call for, like, all humans around the world to stop creating this narrative, which I myself have also played into, both as being a male who sometimes is an idiot, but also as a therapist who's reinforced the idea and even put it out there sometimes, that men are dummies and we just don't know what we're doing in relationships. Men do. We just have learned, many men I see and have worked with have learned over time, whatever you think and feel, don't worry about it. Just kind of push that down and make the other person happy. We're totally misguided in doing that. And oftentimes it just gets way worse by doing it. And we do stupid stuff. I'm not saying in any way that men don't do stupid things and aren't at times very hurtful to women. But I wanted to start this today to say the reason it's titled the way it's titled is because I wanted to, I talk with every couple at some point about the idea that if you're coming into therapy and you want something to be different in your relationship, you have to change it. You have to come in. If you come in and tell me all the things this other person's doing, you're wasting time and money. I already know, I can already see. It happened on Friday. This couple was like, she turned to me and said, you see, he just did this, this, and this. And I said, yes, I saw that. And I have a very different explanation than you do for why he did that. And I explained this, 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 and this. He's like, yeah, that's why I did it. He's like, I did do that and I shouldn't have. And he apologized. But it's like, you don't need to tell me. It's not, I do this all day for a living. But also show up. The nature of therapy, if you go into therapy for individual therapy and you show up and say, everyone around me is being mean. What can we do to make sure that people stop being mean to me? My answer will be nothing. Now, if I dig around and find out, do you realize that you're every time you meet somebody, you call them a name, that might be why people are being mean to you. So I can change that with you. So in relationships, and I have one question, and this is the point of today. It's a short one today. Weird. I could really keep going. I'm sure many of you would wish I would. And actually, you probably will just want to listen to this episode on repeat. You're welcome. But I'll edit that out later. I had a cold last week for 2 days. Who has a cold for 2 days? I thought it was just allergies. It was not. So I think there's one question I want everyone to ask themselves when things are going wrong or when they want things to be different in their relationship. Right? Everyone needs to ask, and this is not an easy question. It's an easy enough question to ask. It's not easy to act on. And there is a line in this, which I'll talk about in a second. But the question is, what is it that I did that got us here? Or what could I be doing differently to improve this? What is my part in doing this? That's a question I ask almost everyone to ask themselves in my office because it's the only thing you can change and blah, blah, blah. We all say the same things as therapists. The only person you can change is you. But it's true. But more specifically, I think, and I'm trying to work on my wording with this as a therapist. I don't want people thinking, what am I doing wrong? As much as what am I doing that is a part of this process? What am I doing that's ineffective? What am I doing? Like if I walk in and I'm having a conversation with my wife and all of a sudden she just kind of shuts down on me. I mean, it's good to ask, as you should, to say, hey, what just happened? You just kind of shut down. It feels like this conversation just changed. But I also have to ask, hey, what did I do that made that happen? Is there something I said that went this way? Was I implying certain things? Was I coming across too harsh? Because most of the time, not even most of the time, every single time, if you ask that question, you can find something you did, and not necessarily you did wrong. We really have to stop thinking you're doing something wrong because sometimes you're doing exactly what you should be doing, but it's not having the desired outcome. We do have to lose the idea of that if you say things and do things the right ways all the time, that the outcomes will always be good. There's no way that would ever happen. You just have to know every single thing you interact with is a process of some sort. And so you're going to have to say, hey, is this process working? So if you're getting these responses you don't like, you should be asking, okay, wait, maybe there's something I could see about what I'm doing that needs to shift. So that's the kind of question that I want everyone to take from this. It's not to say that, I mean, I feel it's okay to have an episode where I say, hey, women, in my sessions, at least, I think you guys could be a little less reactive and judgmental. Even if that was all I said today, I think that's okay. Cause we've had like 162 episodes of basically saying the same thing to men. So you can have one episode, but even that, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, no, I understand why you're doing it. It's not effective. And I mean, I have a few different couples right now that this happens consistently where she wants him to open up. And as soon as he starts to, she just jumps all over it and cuts it apart. And I think, what are you doing? Is this not what you wanted? And then they'll get mad at me. Not always. So I do think men and women both have to look and say, hey, wait, maybe there's something I could be doing differently that I haven't addressed yet. And I need to pay attention to what that is. And it can be helpful when you're not in the middle of a fight to go to your partner and say, hey, what do I do? Like, I notice that sometimes you do this. Why does that happen? Like sometimes you shut down or sometimes it feels like you're coming at me. Is there something that I do that kind of triggers that? If you can, like almost all things right now, it feels like in pop psychology, and even some of our research is leaning this way now, seems to be leaning towards you're doing great. It's probably your partner. And here's how you work. Here's how you can live with a partner like that without looking and saying, hey, maybe your partner's like that because you're like this as a partner. So I want everyone to just start thinking through. I say this like, and everyone put on your thinking caps. But I do want I think please in your relationships on a regular basis, keep asking like, well, what is it that I do? I mean, I've done this recently with a few different things in my relationship where it's like, oh, maybe it's because I do this that she reacts this way. And I bet if I approach this differently in a way that feels more consistent with me being myself, this would go better for me. Specifically because it wouldn't feel like I was, I don't know, catering to this to avoid her being upset or whatever it is. So ask yourself the question as often as you can. That I said earlier, there is a line to this, like if your husband or wife is using just terrible names and calling you all sorts of terrible things, I don't think you have to just say, no, Rob just said I should say, well, maybe this is my fault. I'm not saying that. But even that, it's like, oh, well, please stop calling me names or stop using that language around me, or please don't whatever. But also, that can't be a trump card that says because this person used these names, it means I did nothing wrong. You may not have used names, but you may have done some things that were ineffective and you could change those things. Sometimes it's just as simple as approaching the conversation with the assumption that they're going to get all angry and defensive. And so you came on a little strong. Was that wrong? No, it was kind of a natural response. But where you did something ineffective was thinking in advance, they're probably going to do this. Really, all you should be thinking about is what is my message and how do I convey this in an honest way? And by the way, your message should not be about them specifically as much as like, hey, this is going on and this is what it's doing to me. And I'd like to talk about that. So you're welcome. I just gave you the one question to solve all answers and save all marriages and relationships. So thanks for sitting in with me all by myself. Come back next time when there's 3 of us and catch us on the Manspace. Look what you did, you little jerk.